Hi, so this is my ski exercise machine that I built. I was going to buy a Skier's Edge or a Proform, which are, of course, professionally made machines, and they were incredibly expensive at the time. They subsequently went on sale, and I would have bought one had I built this, had I wanted to build it afterwards, had I not built it. But you can kind of see how it works. You stand in the little foot trucks, and they pivot, and then bungee cords give you resistance right and left. This is a close-up of it. There's six 48-inch bungees on either side. They go around a wooden dowel, and I'll give you all the dimensions of it later on. And then they attach to the truck, which moves back and forth on the rails. As a disclaimer, I don't recommend anybody make one of these. I have no idea if this is safe. When I use it, I always hold on to straps overhead so that I don't fall or if something happens. I'm not an expert in these things. I'm not putting that up to recommend anybody make one. It's just one that I made, and I thought people would be interested in seeing it. So there's the bungees. They go around a dowel. The frame is just made of 2x4s. It's 6 feet long. It's a total of 19 inches wide. The cross pieces are 16 inches wide. The truck itself is made of, I believe, 1-inch square steel stock that I just bought at Home Depot. The length of the truck parallel to the device is 24 inches. The width perpendicular to the device is 16 inches. There's a U-track metal. Also, I just bought at Home Depot that makes the cross pieces, and they're just bolted in with bolts that are just drilled out to the proper size. I put double bolts and Loctite on it. Those pieces are just made of that corrugated steel. You see it in Home Depot, perforated steel. I can't remember. It's angle steel. It's made of 2 angle pieces that are 13.5 inches long, and the cross pieces that they're bolted to are 5.25 inches long, and they're just bolted with regular bolts. I don't know if I needed to use the aluminum tracking. Those wheels are just rollerblade wheels. Actually, they're skateboard wheels. They have a kind of an odd center ball bearing. It's 8 millimeters, and that 8 millimeter bolt that goes through, I had to buy a special at Ace Hardware. They had metric. And you can see it's double bolted with a lock nut on the end so that the wheels don't tend to come off, and they're slightly loose. And there's one washer between the wheel and the metal bolt there so that it runs freely. And I just did everything kind of by eye when I was doing it to size it up. And those angles are pretty strong. I've never had them even about to bend. There's just little nuts and bolts in the end holding them together. So there's only 2 on each end. The perforations make it easy. And one of the holes goes through where the bolt for the wheel is, so they pivot when you're going back and forth. There's an extra piece of wood there that joins 2 pieces of 2x4. Had I known I was going to do this ahead of time, I would have just splurged and bought a full piece of wood. But I only had 2 happy. Now this wheel underneath keeps the whole thing from riding off the tracks. Now those are kind of cheap wheels. They're used for dollies. I also bought them at Home Depot. They're also held on with some of that perforated angle iron, and I wish I had made those better quality and used rollerblade wheels. At the time, I think I had to pay $14 for the rollerblade wheels. I said, I'll get these $2 wheels at Home Depot, but I'm going to replace them because that's what makes all the noise when the thing is running, is those little crummy guide wheels on the bottom, and they help keep the whole thing from running off the tracks. I tried it without it when I first built it, and the wheels kept riding up on the aluminum tracks, the aluminum angle iron, and the aluminum angle stock. And I just said, I guess I'm going to have to put guide wheels in. And once I did it, it ran fine. If you look inside, sorry for the camera work there, you can see how the wheels keep it there sideways. And you see the black mark where the plastic and rubber, whatever the wheel is rubbing off on the wood. I want to do a better job with that and get the... I'll just bolt those wheels like I have for the main truck on the ball bearing. I'll just bolt them underneath with a through bolt and some washers or a standoff or something like that to hold them in place. The bungees are just hooked on that crossbar, which I think is like a 1.5 by ½ inch U-shaped angle, stock. And I just have, you can see tie wraps holding the hooks on. Underneath, I did it in two different ways. One is this wire that I just bent around, made little hooks, put the hooks through. And you can see there's little tie wraps in there to hold it steady. And those two cross pieces are also 16 inches, and they're flat, so the truck doesn't hit them. And on the other side, I did it a little differently. I just put screws in, and I just used tie wraps to hold the hooks to screws with the head sticking out. There's kind of a long shot of it. Like I said, it's 6 feet long. And you see I have these straps up. I don't know if any of you are climbers. Those are runners, they're called, and they're used for climbing. When you put carabiners through them, I used to do rock climbing when I was younger. And I just have them bolted through a very heavy bolt through one of the beams, and I hold on to them. You can use poles also. I've done it with poles, but I didn't want to have to leave the poles out or put rubber tips on them, and so I just did it with these straps, and there it is, bolted into the ceiling through a carabiner. You could use anything. You could just use poles. I was afraid I'd fall. I didn't know if the thing would break. I didn't know how sturdy it would be. And see, you just stand in the hit trucks. My hands are up because I'm grabbing through those things. You work it back and forth. And if you really want to bottom it out, you might want to make it a little longer than 6 feet. I'm a little careful. I bottomed it out a few times, and I bent the lower wheels. I probably would have, 7 feet would probably be a little better. Just now that I've already built it, but it still works well. I'm 5'10", so my back and forth is a little longer probably than some people's, and they're just holding on to the straps above, so I don't have to worry about falling. And I'm not really pulling very hard on them, and just steadying myself. And do we have just another close-up of it? You can see the lengthwise pieces that have the wheels in them. I think they're 1 or 3/4 inch steel, tubular steel. They're hollow. And there's just another shot of the wheel. That's an 8mm one. I guess you can get different ones online. I cut the metal with not a hacksaw, but a reciprocating saw, a jigsaw. You could also cut it. They have metal cutting blades that you can use with circular saws, like a handsaw. And they cut through metal like butter. I've subsequently used them, and they're really a pleasure to use, and they're not expensive. Maybe $8 for a metal cutting circular saw blade. And that's a really easy way to cut it, a lot easier than the jigsaw. The aluminum, of course, cuts easily. I just cut it with a hacksaw. There's screws holding the aluminum track into the wood, and those screws have a chamfer in them. You could use a chamfer bit, and I did that so that they were below the surface of the aluminum so they wouldn't interfere with the running of the polyurethane wheel. And there's that guide wheel you see underneath that's held in at a right angle, but the same angle pieces that I used for the foot trucks. And it's just standard 2x4s.